What happens when your family thinks you can't afford dinner, but you secretly own the restaurant? My brother invited me to his fancy birthday party, completely unaware that I was about to flip his world upside down. This is the story of how one dinner revelation changed everything. My brother thought I couldn't even afford to show up at his birthday dinner. He actually told people I might need to borrow money for an Uber there. What none of them knew was I owned the restaurant. But let me back up for a second. You know that feeling when your own family treats you like you're invisible, when they look right through you like you're some kind of failure they're embarrassed to claim. That was my reality for 28 years. My name is Avery Parker, and this is the story of how I went from being the family disappointment to completely flipping the script at my brother's 32nd birthday party. And trust me, the look on his face when he found out the truth, priceless. See, my brother Ethan has always been the golden child. Harvard, MBA, six-figure salary at Goldman Sachs, the works. Me, I was just the girl who dropped out of Northwestern to chase some crazy dream about opening cafes. At least that's what they all thought. Last month, Ethan called me up. First time in 6 months, by the way. He's planning this big birthday bash at Meridian, one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants. You know, the kind of place where a single entree costs more than most people's grocery budget for a week. Avery, he said, and I could already hear that condescending tone creeping in. I know money's tight for you right now, but I'd really love for you to be there. Maybe you could just come for dessert. I don't want you to feel pressured about the full dinner. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I said, "Don't worry about me, Ethan. I'll be there." What he didn't know was that 3 years ago, I quietly became a co-owner of Meridian, along with 4 other upscale establishments across the Midwest. But we'll get to that part. You want to know how this all started? Picture this suburban Chicago 1995. I'm 7 years old, sitting at our kitchen table with a cardboard box I've turned into a pretend restaurant. I'm taking orders from my stuffed animals, making mud pies I called gourmet cuisine. My mom walked in, took one look, and said, "Avery, honey, why don't you play something more realistic?" But when Ethan announced at age 9 that he wanted to be a businessman, Dad bought him a briefcase, an actual leather briefcase, for a 9-year-old. That pretty much set the tone for the next 2 decades. Growing up, I was the dreamer. Ethan was the achiever. I'd sketch out restaurant concepts during family dinners, while Ethan discussed stock portfolios he'd researched online. Guess which one got Dad's attention when college applications rolled around? Ethan got into Harvard. I chose Northwestern for their entrepreneurship program. You should have seen the family dinner where I announced my decision. Northwestern has this amazing program where you can actually start a business while you're in school, I said, barely containing my excitement. My dad just nodded slowly and said, "That's nice, sweetheart. Ethan, tell your mom about your internship offer from Goldman." And just like that, I was invisible again. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It gives you superpowers. While everyone's looking the other way, you can build something incredible right under their noses. My junior year at Northwestern, I did exactly that. There was this tiny coffee shop near campus called Bean There. The owner, Mrs. Rodriguez, was struggling to keep it afloat. She was serving amazing coffee, homemade pastries, but the place had no personality, no story. I approached her with a proposal. Let me redesign the space, rebrand, the concept, handle the marketing, in exchange for a small percentage of profits. She had nothing to lose. 6 months later, Bean There had a line out the door every morning. Food bloggers were calling it Chicago's best-kept secret. We'd tripled revenue, but when I called home to share the news, Mom's first question was, "That's wonderful, dear. Are you still keeping up with your grades?" She didn't ask about the business, didn't ask how we turned it around, just worried about my GPA. Meanwhile, Ethan landed a summer internship that Dad wouldn't stop bragging about to literally everyone we met. My son's working on Wall Street became his signature introduction at parties. I graduated Northwestern with a 3.8 GPA and a business that was generating real revenue. Ethan graduated Harvard and got recruited by Goldman Sachs with a starting salary that made Dad tear up with pride. At my graduation dinner, the conversation went something like this. So, Avery, my uncle asked, what's next for you? Following in Ethan's footsteps. Before I could answer, Dad jumped in. Avery's got some interesting little projects going on. We're just hoping she finds something stable soon. Interesting little projects. That's what he called my business. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom for the last time, I made a decision. I wasn't going to spend my life trying to prove myself to people who had already decided I wasn't worth paying attention to. I was going to build something so undeniably successful that they'd have no choice but to see me. I moved to Chicago with my Northwestern roommate, Lucas Chen. Lucas came from money old Chicago family, but he was different. He saw potential where others saw risk. When I pitched him my vision for a boutique cafe concept that could scale across the Midwest, he didn't hesitate. I'm in, he said, but we're doing this right. Full business plan, proper funding, professional everything. We spent 6 months researching planning and securing investors. Our first location opened in Lincoln Park 18 months later. Roasted and grounded. The name was my idea. The concept was simple premium coffee, locally sourced food spaces designed for both work and connection. But here's what made us different. Every detail mattered. The lighting, the music, the way the baristas remembered your name after 2 visits. We weren't just serving coffee. We were creating experiences. The opening week, we served 200 customers. By month 3, we had regulars lining up before we opened. By month 6, we were profitable. I called my family to share the news. That's great, honey, Mom said. How many hours a week are you working there? She thought I was an employee. Still. I own it, Mom. Lucas and I opened this place. Long pause. Oh, well, that's very ambitious, dear. Just make sure you're being careful with money. Careful with money. We just pulled in $180 in our first quarter, but that was just the beginning. By year 2, we opened our second location in Wicker Park. Different neighborhood, same magic. By year 3, we had 4 locations across Chicago and 1 in Milwaukee. The crazy part, my family had no idea. They knew I was doing something with coffee shops, but they thought I was maybe a manager somewhere. They'd see my Instagram posts from different locations and assume I was just visiting places for fun. Ethan, meanwhile, was climbing the corporate ladder at Goldman. And to be fair, he was good at what he did. Really good. But every family gathering became the Ethan show. Ethan just closed a deal worth $12 million, Dad would announce to anyone within earshot. Ethan's being considered for promotion to vice president. Ethan bought a condo in Manhattan. I'd sit there quietly sipping wine knowing I'd just signed a lease for our 6th location. Knowing our annual revenue was approaching $2 million. Knowing food critics were calling us the future of independent coffee culture. But I didn't say anything, because honestly, I was curious how long this could go on. How successful could I become before they noticed? The answer was pretty damn successful. Year 4, we caught the attention of Meridian Restaurant Group. They owned some of the most prestigious dining establishments in the Midwest. Their CEO, Catherine Walsh, reached out personally. "We've been watching what you've built," she said over lunch. "We're impressed. We want to talk partnership." 6 months later, Lucas and I became minority partners in Meridian Restaurant Group. Not just investors, partners, with ownership stakes in 5 high-end restaurants, including Meridian Chicago. The same Meridian where Ethan was now planning his birthday dinner. The irony was delicious. But the best part, my family still had no clue. At Christmas dinner that year, Dad actually asked if I was still playing around with that coffee thing. Playing around. We'd just been featured in Forbes' 30 Under 30 list for restaurant innovation. I smiled and said, "Something like that, Dad," which brings us to 3 weeks ago. Ethan's phone call about his birthday party, the condescending offer to just come for dessert because money might be tight for me. I hung up that call and immediately texted Catherine Walsh. My brother wants to book Meridian for his birthday party. Can we make sure this goes smoothly? Her response came back within minutes. Consider it handled. This should be interesting. Interesting was an understatement. The night of Ethan's birthday party, I spent an hour getting ready. Not because I was nervous, but because I wanted to look the part. Black silk dress designer heels, diamond earrings Lucas had given me when we hit our first million in revenue. The kind of outfit that costs more than most people's rent. I arrived at Meridian 15 minutes late. Strategic timing. The hostess Maria recognized me immediately. Ms. Parker, welcome back. Your brother's party is in the private dining room. I could see Ethan's group through the glass partition. 20 people all dressed to impress, laughing over cocktails that cost $30 each. My parents were there looking slightly uncomfortable in this level of luxury. Ethan was holding court, probably telling some story about his latest conquest in the financial world. As I approached the room, I caught fragments of conversation. Yeah, my sister might join us later, Ethan was saying to someone. She's been going through a rough patch career-wise. I didn't want her to feel left out. A rough patch. I almost smiled. When I walked into the room, conversations didn't exactly stop, but they definitely shifted. You know that moment when someone enters a space and the energy changes. That's what happened. Avery. Ethan jumped up, giving me one of those performative hugs. I'm so glad you made it. Everyone, this is my sister I was telling you about. The way he introduced me, like I was some charity case he'd invited out of obligation. Sorry I'm late, I said, accepting a glass of champagne from the server. Traffic was insane. What I didn't mention was that I'd spent the last hour in Catherine's office upstairs, going over quarterly reports and discussing our expansion into Detroit. Mom came over looking concerned. Honey, you look beautiful. This dress is lovely. Is it new? She was trying to calculate if I could afford it. The mom math was practically visible on her face. Thanks, Mom. Yeah, I picked it up last week. Dad joined us, shaking his head at the menu. These prices are outrageous. $48 for a steak. In my day, you could feed a family of 4 for that. It's worth it, Dad, Ethan said, clearly enjoying playing the generous host. The quality here is supposed to be exceptional. I figured it's my birthday, why not splurge? I sipped my champagne and said nothing. Dinner progressed exactly as I'd expected. Ethan commanded the conversation, telling stories about client deals and office politics. His finance buddies one-upped each other with tales of bonuses and acquisitions. The women talked about boutique shopping and upcoming vacations to Europe. I sat quietly observing, watching my family beam with pride every time Ethan mentioned another professional achievement, listening to my mom tell his girlfriend about how proud we are of our successful son. About halfway through the main course, Ethan stood up with his wine glass. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight, he began. 32 years old, and I honestly can't believe how blessed I am. Great job, amazing friends, family who's always supported me. He looked around the table, his gaze lingering on our parents. Some people talk about following their dreams. I was lucky enough to find a path that was both practical and fulfilling. Dad always taught me that success comes from making smart choices, staying focused, and being realistic about your goals. The implied contrast was clear. He was the one who made smart choices. I was the one who chased unrealistic dreams. So here's to another year of growth, prosperity, and maybe, he winked at his girlfriend, some big life changes on the horizon. Everyone raised their glasses. I noticed the server hovering near the kitchen entrance, holding what looked like a leather portfolio. Our signal. That was beautiful, Ethan, I said, standing up. Mind if I add something? He looked surprised, but gestured for me to continue. I just wanted to say how grateful I am to be here tonight. This place is really special. I paused, making eye contact with each family member. Actually, there's something I should probably mention. I've been keeping a secret from all of you for a while now, and tonight feels like the right time to share it. The table went completely silent. You could hear the soft jazz playing in the background, the clinking of silverware from other diners. Ethan's expression shifted slightly, probably wondering if I was about to announce some kind of personal crisis that would upstage his birthday. The thing is, I continued, I have a confession about how I was able to afford being here tonight. Mom's face showed immediate concern. Dad looked like he was preparing to offer financial help. That's when Lucas appeared in the doorway. I hadn't mentioned Lucas to my family. They knew I had a business partner, but they'd never met him. To them, he was just some guy I worked with at coffee shops. Lucas walked in wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit, carrying himself with the quiet confidence that comes from old money and newer success. He nodded to me, then addressed the table. Good evening, everyone. I apologize for interrupting, but I wanted to personally welcome the Parker family to Meridian. Ethan looked confused. I'm sorry, do we know you? Lucas Chen, he said, extending his hand. I'm Avery's business partner and co-owner of this restaurant. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. Dad's fork hung suspended over his plate. Ethan's mouth actually opened slightly. Co-owner, Ethan repeated slowly. Lucas smiled, completely comfortable with the attention. Among other ventures, yes. Avery and I became partners with Meridian Restaurant Group about 18 months ago. We own stakes in this location, as well as 4 others across the region. He handed the leather portfolio to me. Ms. Parker, the staff wanted me to give you tonight's numbers. We're running about 12% above projections for the month. I accepted the portfolio like it was the most natural thing in the world. Thank you, Lucas. How did the Detroit site visit go yesterday? Excellent. The space is perfect for our concept. We should be able to break ground by September. I could feel every eye at the table on me. The weight of their attention, their confusion, their complete recalibration of everything they thought they knew. Wait, my dad said slowly. Avery, you own this restaurant. Co-own, I corrected. Lucas and I are minority partners with Meridian Restaurant Group. We also own 6 coffee shops under the Roasted and Grounded brand, and we're expanding into Detroit and Minneapolis next quarter. Ethan was staring at me like I'd just announced I was secretly a superhero. But you never said anything. At Christmas, when Dad asked about work, you said you were still doing the coffee thing. I shrugged. I am still doing the coffee thing, just on a slightly larger scale than you realized. Mom found her voice. Honey, how long has this been going on? About 4 years? 5 if you count the Northwestern project that started it all. 4 years! Dad's voice was barely above a whisper. Lucas, bless him, stepped in smoothly. Your daughter is one of the most talented entrepreneurs I've ever worked with. She has an incredible instinct for hospitality and customer experience. We've been featured in Forbes Crane's Chicago Business and Food and Wine magazine. Forbes, Mom echoed. The 30 under 30 list, I said simply. Last year, Ethan was doing math in his head. I could practically see the calculations running behind his eyes. Avery, he said carefully, what kind of revenue are we talking about here? I looked at Lucas. He nodded almost imperceptibly. Last year, our combined ventures generated about $8.2 million in revenue. Profit margins vary by location, but we're typically running between 18 and 24%. Dead silence. Then Ethan's girlfriend, who'd been quiet all evening, let out a small laugh. Oh my God! Avery, you're rich! Not the most elegant way to put it, but accurate. I'm comfortable, I said. Dad was shaking his head slowly. But why didn't you tell us all these years we thought you were struggling? I never said I was struggling. You assumed I was struggling. The truth of that statement hung in the air like smoke. Every time I mentioned the business, you changed the subject, or asked when I was going to find something more stable. You called it playing around. You thought I was a barista who was pretending to be an entrepreneur. Mom's eyes were getting watery. We didn't mean to dismiss you, sweetheart. We were just worried. Worried about that I might actually succeed. That came out sharper than I intended, but honestly, 4 years of pent-up frustration will do that to you. Lucas cleared his throat gently. Perhaps I should let you all continue this conversation privately. Avery, I'll be upstairs if you need anything. After he left the table, remained silent for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Ethan spoke. I don't understand. You let us think you were barely getting by. You let Dad worry about your finances. You let me pay for your Christmas gifts because I thought you couldn't afford to reciprocate. I never asked you to do any of those things. But you didn't stop us. Fair point. No, I didn't. Because I wanted to see how long it would take for one of you to actually ask about my life, instead of assuming you already knew the story. That hit home. I could see it in their faces. The silence stretched on until Mom finally broke. Avery, I'm so sorry. We've been terrible parents to you. You haven't been terrible, I said, and I meant it. You've been human. You saw what you expected to see. Dad was still processing. $8 million. Dad, that's revenue, not profit. But yes, we're doing well. He leaned back in his chair, looking like someone had just told him gravity worked backwards. All those times I offered to help with your rent? I live in a penthouse in River North. The rent is $4,200 a month. I've never needed help with it. Ethan's girlfriend whispered something to him that made his face turn red. What? I asked. Ethan looked embarrassed. She just reminded me that last month I told my boss about my sister who was struggling to make ends meet in the service industry. I was trying to get sympathy points for being a good brother who helped support his family. The irony was almost too much. Ethan, I probably made more money last month than you did. That statement hung in the air like a challenge. Which wasn't my intention, but there it was. How much more? He asked quietly. I looked around the table. His friends were pretending not to listen, but obviously hanging on every word. My parents looked like they were watching a tennis match. Do you really want to do this here? I need to know, I sighed. My take-home last month was about $93,000. That includes salary profit distributions and consulting fees. More silence. $93,000 in 1 month. Mom's voice was barely audible. It was a good month. We closed the Minneapolis deal and opened the new Lincoln Park location. Usually it's closer to 60 or 70. Ethan was doing calculations again. That's more than my annual salary. Your annual salary is $85,000, right, plus bonuses. He nodded slowly. Then yes, but Ethan, this isn't a competition. You're successful too. You have a career you love, you're respected in your field. You're building something meaningful. But you're building an empire. I'm building what makes me happy. That's when Dad surprised me. I owe you an apology. He said, his voice thick with emotion. A big one. Dad, you don't need to... No, I do. All these years I've been bragging about Ethan's achievements while completely ignoring yours. I made you feel invisible in your own family. He was right, but hearing him say it out loud still hit hard. Do you remember when you were 12? He continued. And you set up that lemonade stand that made $80 in one weekend? I smiled despite myself. You said I had good business instincts. I did. And then somewhere along the way, I stopped believing in those instincts. I started thinking that practical meant safe and safe meant success. I was wrong. Mom reached across the table and grabbed my hand. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. We should have been saying that all along. The weird thing was I'd waited so long to hear those words. And now that I was finally hearing them, I realized I didn't need them anymore. Not the way I used to. I appreciate that, Mom. I really do, but I need you to understand something. I built this life without your validation, and I can maintain it without your approval. I love you both, but I don't need you to be proud of me for me to be proud of myself. That was the moment everything shifted. You could feel it in the room. Ethan was quiet for a long time before he spoke again. I have a confession too, he said. I've been jealous of you for years. That caught me off guard. Jealous of what? Your courage, your willingness to take risks, your passion for what you do. He paused. I took the safe route because I was terrified of failing. You jumped off a cliff and built wings on the way down. You're not a failure, Ethan. I'm not a success either, not like you. I'm just competent, reliable. I do what's expected of me and I do it well, but I've never created anything. I've never built anything from nothing. His honesty was unexpected and kind of heartbreaking. There's nothing wrong with being good at what you do, but there's something magical about being great at what you love. We sat with that for a moment. Then Ethan's friend Brad, who'd been quiet all evening, spoke up. So, Avery, are you hiring? Everyone laughed, which broke some of the tension. Actually, Ethan said, I have a serious question. Could we talk about maybe doing some consulting work? My firm handles investments for high net worth individuals. We could probably learn a lot from your approach to business development. I appreciated the gesture, but this was exactly what I'd been afraid of. Ethan, I need to be clear about something. This revelation doesn't change our relationship dynamic. I'm not suddenly going to become your business mentor or your financial advisor or your connection to opportunities. I'm still just your sister. He looked hurt. I wasn't trying to use you. Maybe not consciously, but the fact that your first instinct after learning about my success was to figure out how it could benefit you, professionally, tells me we still have some work to do on boundaries. That stung, but it needed to be said. You're right, he admitted. I'm sorry. Mom was crying now. Not dramatic tears, just quiet sadness. What's wrong, Mom? I'm thinking about all the times you must have wanted to share good news with us and we weren't paying attention. All the times you achieved something amazing and we didn't even notice. She wasn't wrong. There had been a lot of lonely victories over the years. The Forbes feature, I said quietly. I called to tell you about it, and you put me on hold to take a call about Ethan's promotion. Oh God. Mom covered her face with her hands. The day we signed the Meridian partnership, biggest deal of my career. I texted the family group chat and nobody responded. But when Ethan posted a picture of his new car, it got 12 responses in 10 minutes. Dad was shaking his head. We failed you? You didn't fail me. You just didn't see me. But that's okay because I learned to see myself. I looked around the table. At my brother who was still processing this new version of his little sister. At my parents who were grappling with years of unconscious bias. At his friends who were probably going to dine out on this story for months. I don't need you to make up for lost time, I continued. I don't need you to overcompensate or treat me differently now. I just need you to see me as I actually am, not as who you think I should be. Ethan nodded slowly. Can you forgive us? There's nothing to forgive. We all played our parts in this dynamic. You saw me as the struggling dreamer because that's the story I let you believe. I never corrected your assumptions because honestly, I was curious how far I could take it. But also, I added, because I was tired of fighting for space in conversations that should have included me automatically. The waiter appeared to clear our plates, moving efficiently around the emotional intensity at our table. Professional, to the core. After he left, Lucas reappeared. I'm sorry to interrupt again, but Avery Catherine wanted me to let you know that the Chicago Tribune food critic is here tonight. She's at table 12 if you want to say hello. Thanks, Lucas. Maybe later. He nodded and started to leave, then turned back. Also, your interview with Entrepreneur Magazine got moved to tomorrow at 2 instead of Thursday. They want to do it here at Meridian for the photos. Perfect. Thanks for handling that. After he left, Dad asked, Entrepreneur Magazine, cover story about young entrepreneurs who are reshaping the hospitality industry. Ethan laughed, but it wasn't bitter. Of course you're going to be on the cover of a magazine. It's not about me specifically. It's about our approach to community-centered hospitality. Stop being modest, Mom said. You're about to be on the cover of a national magazine. She was right. I had been downplaying it. Okay, Yes, I'm going to be on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine, and I'm excited about it. As you should be, Dad said. We're going to buy 100 copies. Dad, you don't need to. Yes, we do. We're going to put one in every room of the house and give them to everyone we know. For the first time all evening, I felt genuinely emotional. Not angry or vindicated or proven right. Just seen. Thank you, I said simply. Ethan raised his wine glass. I'd like to propose a real toast this time. To my sister Avery, who built an empire while the rest of us weren't paying attention. To courage, vision, and the wisdom to bet on yourself when nobody else will. Everyone raised their glasses. And to family, he continued, and learning to see each other clearly, even when it takes way too long. We drank to that. As the evening wound down, people started saying their goodbyes. Ethan's friends were polite, but clearly processing what they'd witnessed. His girlfriend hugged me and whispered, "You're my new hero." When it was just family left, Dad asked the question I'd been expecting. What happens now? Now we move forward. We have better conversations. We ask each other real questions instead of making assumptions. And maybe we remember that success comes in a lot of different forms. Mom hugged me tighter than she had in years. I love you, sweetheart. I'm so proud of the woman you've become. I love you too, Mom. Ethan and I ended up walking out together. This is going to sound crazy, he said, but I'm glad this happened the way it did. The shock value, the public revelation, all of it. If you'd just told us gradually, I don't think it would have hit the same way. You needed the full picture all at once. We all did. We needed to see how blind we'd been. We reached the street where his Uber was waiting. Avery, I know you said this doesn't change our relationship, but I hope it can change it a little. I want to be a better brother. A brother who actually knows what's going on in your life. I'd like that too. He hugged me goodbye, and for the first time in years, it felt genuine. As his car pulled away, I stood outside Meridian looking up at the building I partially owned, thinking about the strange journey that had brought me to this moment. My phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. How did it go? I typed back. Better than expected. Harder than I thought. Exactly what needed to happen. Then I walked home to my penthouse, finally free from the weight of a secret I'd been carrying for 4 years. 6 months have passed since that birthday dinner, and I can honestly say it changed everything. Not because my family suddenly started treating me differently, though they did, and not because I finally got the validation I thought I wanted, though that was nice too. It changed everything because I realized I didn't need their approval to be proud of what I'd built. I already was proud. I had been all along. My relationship with Ethan is better now. Real conversations instead of surface-level check-ins. He actually asks about my business not because he wants something from it, but because he's genuinely curious about my life. And I ask about his work too, really listening instead of just waiting for my turn to talk. Mom and Dad have become my biggest cheerleaders, which is sweet, if a little overwhelming sometimes. Dad keeps newspaper clippings of every article that mentions our restaurants. Mom follows all our social media accounts and comments on everything. It's like they're making up for lost time. But here's what I learned from this whole experience. Hiding your success doesn't protect you from disappointment. It just delays it. For 4 years, I thought I was protecting myself from their judgment by keeping my achievements secret. Really, I was protecting myself from the possibility that they might not care as much as I hoped they would. And you know what? I was probably right to be cautious. Because the truth is, people can only see you through the lens of their own understanding. If they've decided you're one thing, it takes something pretty dramatic to shift that perception. But that's their limitation, not yours. The other thing I learned, success tastes better when you don't have to hide it. Since that night, I've been more open about my achievements. Not boastful, just honest. When someone asks what I do for work, I tell them. When we hit a new milestone, I share it with people who matter to me. When magazines want to interview me, I say yes instead of deflecting. It turns out owning your success is just as important as creating it. Lucas and I are opening 3 new locations this year: Detroit, Minneapolis, and surprisingly, a second Chicago location in my old neighborhood where I grew up. Full circle moment. We're also launching a mentorship program for young women who want to start businesses in hospitality. Because I remember what it felt like to have a vision that nobody else could see, and I don't want other people to have to build their dreams in silence. The program is called Visible Ventures, and our first cohort starts next month. 20 women, ranging from college students to career changers, all with ideas that deserve to be taken seriously. I wish I could tell you that this story ends with my family completely transformed, with all our old patterns magically healed. But real life doesn't work that way. We still slip back into old dynamics sometimes. Dad still brags more about Ethan's achievements than mine, though he catches himself now and corrects it. Mom still worries about whether I'm working too hard or taking care of myself, as if success and self-care are mutually exclusive. And Ethan, he's actually started his own side project, a financial consulting firm that specializes in helping small businesses navigate growth. He credits our conversation at dinner for inspiring him to take the leap. "You showed me what courage looks like," he told me last month. I figured it was time I found some of my own. The most important change, though, is in me. I stopped waiting for permission to be proud of what I've accomplished. I stopped minimizing my achievements to make other people comfortable. I stopped carrying the weight of other people's limited expectations. Because here's the thing about being underestimated: it's only a problem if you underestimate yourself too. So, if you're listening to this and you recognize something in my story, if you've ever felt invisible in your own life or diminished in your own family, I want you to know something. You don't need anyone's permission to be proud of who you're becoming. You don't need anyone's validation to pursue what lights you up. You don't need to hide your success to protect other people's feelings. Build your life on your own terms. Take up space. Let your achievements speak for themselves, but don't whisper them. And remember, the people who truly love you will want to celebrate your success, not minimize it. If they can't handle your growth, that says something about them, not about you. Your story matters, your dreams matter, your success matters. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Especially yourself. Have you ever been underestimated by the ones who should have believed in you the most? Have you ever hidden your achievements because you were afraid of how people might react? Have you ever felt like you had to choose between success and belonging? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and I want to hear about your journey. Whether you're just starting out or you're already building something amazing, your experience matters. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that you don't need permission to be proud of who you're becoming, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We share stories like this every week, stories about courage, growth, and learning to see yourself clearly, even when the world doesn't. Because sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is simply refuse to stay small. Until next time, keep building, keep growing, and keep taking up space. You've earned it.